Normally when people come to practice Buddhism or learn meditation, they're looking for something. Probably most valuable is looking for a way out of suffering, a way out of stress, a way to experience more peace, more happiness in the mind. Ajahn Chah was like that. He already realized his own life was full of stress and suffering when he was a teenager, son of a farmer, working the fields and living in very simple conditions, with not much money or material comfort. When he read about the Buddhist teachings, which talked about a higher kind of happiness, it was very attractive to him, because he realized the normal life that he could expect living in rural northeast Thailand would be hard, full of difficulties, short lifespan, lots of chance for disease, injury, poverty in different ways, not much education available, so opportunities were very limited. So the Buddhist teachings that life can be full of suffering was very obvious to him, which motivated him to look for something better than that or higher than that, the way out of suffering. And that's not much different from the Buddha himself. The Buddha wasn't born into poverty or didn't face so many material, physical hardships as a son of a ruler, nobleman of northern India. But his keen wisdom realized that however much wealth and comfort you have in life, you never quite get beyond the causes of stress and suffering if you don't know how to look after and train your mind. After all, if you live in this world, whatever wealth, fame, fortune, success you can achieve, when you die you can't take it with you. So for many people, this is the starting point of their search for truth, search for a way out. And the Buddha pointed out that the way out of suffering is knowledge, what we call vicā in Buddhism. Because the way into suffering, the way for us to suffer as human beings, comes from ignorance, the opposite of knowledge, what we call avijja. But the kind of knowledge the Buddha was pointing to, vicā, isn't simply, say, like technical knowledge of philosophy or theories, the knowledge that will help us to run the world and build the world. It's more about the knowledge about how delusion arises in the human mind, how it takes over the human mind, how it causes us stress and suffering by feeding, craving and attachment. So as one way in Buddhism we define knowledge? Does it help you to reduce the causes of suffering from your mind? Craving, attachment. Because true knowledge in the Buddhist sense, vicca, must do that. Because some knowledge in the world doesn't really do that. You can know things, but you're still prey to your, what we call mental defilements, kilesa, greed, anger, delusion, which breed fear, worry, all kinds of stress. And you can have lots of knowledge about the world, know how to do things, but you can still be suffering, because it may not yet be true vicca, knowledge that is part of the path that will lead you out of suffering. This is why training the mind, particularly in mindfulness, samadhi, and in investigation of the Dhamma, is central to the Buddhist path. Because the kind of knowledge that will free you from suffering comes from inner awareness, mindfulness, inner awareness. Although we can gain much from listening and reading, talking to other people, wise people, people who understand the path, ultimately we have to develop our own inner knowledge and wisdom. But certainly in the beginning of practice we do rely on teachers, the words of the Buddha, the words of wise teachers, because our starting point is ignorance. You come to practice meditation, you don't know yet. You're still following views, opinions, your thoughts and emotions. Much of that is just an extension of delusion. So at first we take on the wisdom of the Buddha and our teachers. And that's very helpful, because we can't fully trust our own knowledge and wisdom yet. And that's why we come to practice. If we were wise, we wouldn't need to practice. But the idea is to take the words of the Buddha and the teachers, put them into practice until we get to know for ourselves. The kind of lessons we learn that we know for ourselves, you don't forget. They just become part of your mental makeup, part of the conditioning process. True wisdom stays with you. Even if you lose your memory, the true wisdom is still there. So this is one of the obstacles in practice of meditation, training the mind, because society doesn't give much value to this kind of inner knowledge, wisdom. Partly because it's very personal. It's quite difficult to show or express it to other people. Whereas all the normal kinds of knowledge and experience we get in life, it's more associated with, say, earning a living and doing things in the world, making a name for yourself in one way or another. That's much more attractive and fashionable, so it's what people give value to. But knowledge how to make your mind peaceful, although it sounds like a good idea, it's almost invisible, because it's for each individual to know for themselves. Ajahn Chah used to say, the knowledge of Dhamma brings things to a conclusion, brings things to an end. Nibbana brings things to an end, brings samsara to an end, brings suffering to an end. Knowledge of the world doesn't bring things to an end. Often it can raise as many questions as it solves, and it leads on to more creation, more doing things. One thing leads to another. There's no end to it. As we see nowadays, it's very difficult to keep up with, say, technology, particularly all the kind of refined digital technology, because it's forever developing the knowledge, the technical skills people need, and so on. There's no end to it. The knowledge of the Dhamma actually brings things to an end, and that's why it's peaceful. And when something has no end, then it can be very agitating, can stimulate a lot of restlessness in the mind. But the Dhamma brings the mind to peace. And that peace is not based on not knowing anything or some kind of state of just falling asleep or being hypnotized. It just means being aware, but without letting the mind get caught into craving and attachment. The normal knowledge of the world can be very useful for us to solve all kinds of problems, health problems, society's problems. We can build things, we can run the world, we can harness the resources of the world, do all kinds of things. Very useful. But the trouble is we also have unenlightened minds. So often that knowledge gets hijacked by the unenlightened mind for more selfish purposes, so greed, anger, delusion. So they say most technological advances come when there's a war, because you have to defeat your enemy, so you work out how to make better weapons, better scientific methods to defeat your enemy. So technology can be very useful, but it can also be very harmful, because it's still under the influence of the defilements. Depends on the mind of the person using it and developing it. Whereas the Dhamma is not like that. Dhamma is always peaceful, always for the ending of karma, the ending of birth and death and suffering. And that peace can be achieved quite quickly. And when you meditate, you're learning to let go of the 5 hindrances as you meditate. So when you're successful at doing that, you bring your mind to one point on an object, such as the breath. It's very peaceful, because most of your mental agitation, worrying, concerns about all kinds of things are quiet, at least for a while. Your mind gets a rest, becomes still. And strangely enough, from the stillness we often can get to see and know things, more things than before. Because we're able to look at the world in a more objective way, unbiased way, from a place of stillness, rather than always following our loves and hates. The unenlightened, untrained mind is always throwing up emotions and getting lost in them. What we like, what we don't like, what we want, what we don't want, loving this, hating that. But if you bring your mind to stillness, you can look at things, even look at it, the mind itself, and see through, say, love and hate, see through craving and attachment, see it for what it is. see moods and thoughts as temporary mental states that arise, pass away. And you don't have to identify with them or take them so personally when your mindfulness and awareness is clear, strong. Even if you have an unpleasant memory or a more negative thought arise, if you have enough mindfulness, you just see it as a negative thought, an unpleasant memory, a painful feeling. You see it for what it is, and then let go when there's awareness. The more solid your awareness, the more consistent your awareness and mindfulness is, the more you'll be able to see things in that way without attaching or grasping. And then you don't make so many problems. I think most people have this experience, when they have some particular problem or suffering in their life to do with their job or their health or their family or something. They're just thinking and thinking and thinking, getting more stressed. But whenever they have the light bulb moment and they come back to try and develop some mindfulness through meditation, so often you hear people say, as soon as I started meditating, instead of trying to think my way out of the problem, I just started to let go of the attachment to those thoughts. Everything improved immediately. Start to relax a bit and can see better what is what. So part of our problem is we just forget what we have to do. So you're caught up into some stress, but instead of looking for the good way to understand and let go of that stress, we often just try and force our way out, which only causes more pain and confusion. So the practice of meditation, particularly, however difficult, challenging it seems, is invaluable. Saying in the Buddha's teaching, it's invaluable if you want to train your mind. Learning to bring up mindfulness, have enough strength of mind, enough mindfulness to be able to let go of different kinds of negative thoughts. It's invaluable if you really want to see the truth and free your mind from suffering. It's a skill you have to keep coming back to and working at. And we just chanted the Awada Patimokkha. So it always reminds us, the Buddha said, patience, endurance is the chief destroyer of these mental defilements or negative emotions. The more patient you can be as you practice, the more you give your mind a chance to let go. When we're impatient, we give up, we stop. So you're meditating, you say, it's too difficult, mind is too restless, body is uncomfortable, so you might quit very quickly. If you have enough patience, you can keep bringing up the mindfulness, keep watching, learning. It gives you more chance to let go of your stress and understand better what it is and where it comes from. If you're patient, you can be successful. And with patience, you can endure things. Being patient means enduring even when sometimes your mind is not very peaceful at all. But in the end, it's just thoughts and feelings. If you're consciously developing patience, then you can cope with that. When you're patient, you can put up with painful feelings of tiredness. You can put up with all the obstacles. And that gives you a chance to really see them as impermanent and let go. If your mind is always impatient, moving around, as soon as you see something you like, you kind of move towards it. As soon as some experience comes up you don't like, you try and run away from it. Then it's very hard to learn, because your mind is always moving, always reacting. And most people find that when you're consciously being patient with a difficult experience, quite often it's an experience you can learn from or be with until things change. You realize maybe it's not as bad as you thought. When we're impatient, we only make things worse in the long run, because the mind is weaker and we keep running away or moving away from what we don't like. So it's like we keep hitting that same point every time you meet something similar again, you react in the same old way. Like the proverbial monk who moves from monastery to monastery, always trying to find the perfect place. Ajahn Chah told him, "Oh, you're like somebody with a bad smell in your bag. Wherever you go, the bad smell goes with you. So you're always complaining about the new place you're in, without realizing it comes from the bad smell in your bag." If we don't learn to be patient with suffering, we'll never learn to overcome it. Sometimes we try to overcome our suffering by seeking out knowledge, asking questions, listening to more Dhamma, reading more Dhamma, hoping to get some special insight from somebody else's wisdom. And of course that can help sometimes, but sometimes we just have to be very patient with our own problem. Patient, watch it, learn from it, and in the end you'll see, oh, whatever arises must cease. It's impermanent. Things change. When you're patient enough, you can see that change. So, maybe I'll just leave you with these thoughts tonight. Keep up your practice, keep practicing, developing patience. Patience, like any other Dhamma quality, is something you develop more and more. So you start with small moments of patience when you're meditating or when you're trying to do something useful, or chanting or listening to a talk or doing some dana, helping somebody. You start small and then you keep going and you get more patience as you keep practicing. You get better at it and you learn how to bring it up as a quality of mind. And then it can carry you through maybe when you're facing some real suffering or when you have a real obstacle. You know how to be patient with it rather than just give up. Anyway, I'll leave you with these thoughts tonight.